Hello and welcome to the next edition of the BriefingsDirect Voice of the Customer podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on digital transformation success stories. Stay with us now to learn how agile businesses are fending off disruption in favor of innovation. Our next Developer Productivity Insights interview explores how a South Africa insurance innovator has built a modern IT hyperconverged infrastructure environment that replicates databases so fast that developers can test and retest to their heart's content. We'll now learn how a King Price in Pretoria also gained data efficiencies and heightened disaster recovery benefits from their HCI-enabled architecture. Here to help us explore the myriad benefits of a data transfer-intensive environment, we're joined by Jacobus Stein, Operations Manager at King Price in Pretoria, South Africa. Welcome.
Morning. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for being with us. So tell us, what are the top trends that were driving your interest in modernizing your data replication capabilities?
One of the challenges we had was that business was really flying blind in the whole environment, so we had to create the platform and ability for them to actually get the data out of the production environment as quickly as possible to allow them to make informed decisions literally almost near real time.
What were some of the impediments to moving data and creating new, spin up new environments for your developers and your operators before?
We literally had the challenge where, because we were very disparate environments, we had to copy databases across the network onto new environments, and that was very time consuming. It literally took us 2 to 3 days to get an environment up and running for the developers. It made quite technology that you would think would be easy, like replication. It proved to be quite a challenge for us because it's vast amounts of data, and the whole hyperconvergence infrastructure just eliminated all those challenges.
One of the benefits of going at the infrastructure level for a solution is not only do you solve one problem, but you probably solve multiple ones. Things like replication and dedupe all come more integrated into the environment. So tell us about sort of the larger benefits package that you got when you went to a hyperconverged environment.
The deduplication was definitely one of our bigger gains. We've got about 6 to 8 development teams, and they literally have an identical copy of our production environment that they use for testing and UAT and things like that. So we would literally at any point in time have at least 10 copies of our production environment all over the place. If you don't dedupe at that level, you would need vast amounts of storage. So that really addressed a big concern for us in terms of storage, having everything, and it's basically one copy on your physical disk.
Of course, any business's agility does hinge on your developer's productivity. When you can tell your developer, go ahead, spin up, do what you want, that's a really great productivity benefit.
Yeah, we had the challenge where we literally had daily fights between the IT operations and infrastructure guys and the developers because they were needing resources and we couldn't provide them with resources, not because we didn't have resources at hand, but just the time to spin it up, to get the network guys to configure their environment and things like that. So it was literally a 3-4 day exercise to get the environment up and running. And those guys really trying to push the agile development methodology. In a 2-week sprint, you can't afford to lose 2 or 3 days.
No. You don't want to be in a scrum where they're saying you got to wait 3 or 4 days. It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't end well for the infrastructure guys, definitely not.
All right, well, let's step back. Tell us a bit about King Price. What is your organization like for those who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, King Price initially started off as a short-term insurance company about 5 years ago in Pretoria. We've got a very unique, one-of-a-kind business model, and the short of it is that as your vehicle value depreciates, so does your monthly insurance premium, and that has been our biggest selling point. But there's a lot of things. So we see ourselves as a disruptor, but there's a lot of things that's disrupting the short-term insurance industry in South Africa as well. Things like Uber and self-driving cars is definitely a threat in the long term for us. It's also a very competitive industry in South Africa. We've been launching new businesses. We've launched commercial insurance recently. We launched cyber insurance. We're really adopting new ventures.
And of course, in any competitive business environment, your margins are thin. You have to do things very efficiently. Were there any other economic benefits to going to a hyperconverged environment that you can think of on not just developer productivity, on speed and agility, but where there are economic benefits in the long term?
Yeah, so on a data center level itself, I mean, the amount of floor space that you need, the footprint is much smaller in a hyperconverged space. It eliminates a lot of requirements in terms of networking and switching and storage. So the ease of deployment in itself makes it a lot simpler. And then on the business side itself, the ability to have that data ready at hand for the guys in the analytics environments and the ratings environments, they can make much more informed decisions literally on the fly if they need to gear up in the call center or to take on a new marketing strategy or something like that.
So it's not difficult to rationalize the investment to go to hyperconverged?
No, it was actually quite easy. It was and thinking back, I can't imagine life or IT without our investment that we've made. I can't see how we can move forward without that.
And also to give our audience a sense of the scale of your development organization, how many developers do you have? How many teams? What numbers of builds do you have going at any given time? That sort of thing.
It's around 50 developers, 6 to 8 teams, depending on the scale of the projects that they're working on. Each development team focuses on a specific unit within the business. And they've got, like I say, it's 2 weekly sprints that they do, and some of the releases are quite big, and it's literally getting product out to market as quickly as possible, functionality to the business. So yeah, again, we can't afford to have a piece of product stuck in the development house for 6 or 8 weeks, because by that time you're too late.
All right, let's drill down a bit into the actual hyperconverged infrastructure you have in place. What did you look at? How did you make a decision, and what did you end up doing?
We initially invested in the prior to the acquisition. We invested in the SimpliVity 3400 cubes for our development space, and we thought that would pretty much address our needs, because prior to that we did invest in some traditional blade and storage infrastructure. So we were thinking, okay, well, that will go for the production environment, and the SimpliVities will be used for the development environment. But the gains we saw in the development environment was just so big. We very quickly made the decision to actually get additional cubes and deploy that to the development space, to the production space. And yeah, it just grew from there. So we've got the entire environment running on SimpliVity cubes now. We've got some, like I said, traditional storage that we still use for archiving purposes. But other than that, it's 100% SimpliVity, HPE SimpliVity.
Sure. What storage environment do you associate with that to get the best benefit?
Well, we're currently using the HP 3PAR storage, and it's like I say, it's working quite well. We've got some production environments running there, a lot of archiving uses for that. Yeah, and it's still very complementary to our environment.
You know, I've seen in a lot of other organizations, Jacobus, is that they will start with HCI in something like development, move it towards production of more and more applications, but then they also extend it into things like data warehouses, supporting their data infrastructure and analytics infrastructure. Has that been the case with you all?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, we initially started with the development environment. We thought that's going to be it. We very soon adopted it to production environments. And it's at the point where we literally got an entire cube dedicated to the enterprise data warehouse guys, the teams running all the modeling and the pricing structures and things like that. It's proving to be very helpful for them as well, because those guys, they churn data. It's scary.
And then, of course, I've also seen in other organizations a slippery slope towards, once you've got a certain critical mass of HCI, that you started thinking about an entire software-defined data center, and then the opportunity to even entirely mirror data centers for disaster recovery and fast recovery given any number of issues. Are you quite along that path as well, or is that still something to come?
That's actually a project that we launched about 2 or 3 months ago. So we are actually redesigning our entire infrastructure architecture. Initially, we thought we were going to build the traditional DR data center, kind of like a cold site. But with the ease of failover, the WAN optimization and the compression, it just makes a lot more sense to actually just build a second active data center. So that's what we're busy doing now, and we're going to deploy the new Gen 10s in that data center.
Is there any point in time where you're going to be experimenting more with cloud, multi-cloud, and then dealing with a hybrid IT environment where you're going to want to manage that? And we've certainly heard some news recently from HPE about OneSphere. Any thoughts about how that might relate to your organization?
Yeah, as part of our engagement with the guys from Microsoft in terms of our licensing, it's definitely things that we've been talking about. Things like HP OneSphere is definitely it's going to make a lot of sense in our environment because there's a lot of workload that we can actually just pass on to the cloud that we don't need to have on-premise on a permanent basis. And even the guys from our enterprise data warehouse, I mean, there's a lot of jobs that they run every now and then. We can just pass that off to the cloud. And something like HP OneSphere is definitely going to make it a lot easier for us.
Very good. Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been exploring how an insurance innovator has built a modern IT hyperconverged infrastructure that replicates databases very fast for their developers and has also led to a wholesale modernization of their IT environment. We've learned how King Price has also gained data efficiencies and heightened disaster recovery benefits as a result of their HCI-enabled architecture. So please join me in thanking our guest. We've been here with Jacobus Stein, Operations Manager at King Price in Pretoria, South Africa. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to our audience as well for joining us for this BriefingsDirect Voice of the Customer Digital Transformation Success Story. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise-sponsored interviews. Thanks again for listening. Please pass this content along to your IT community, and do come back next time.